My name is Ashish Ramdas, and I'm a Senior Program Manager in the Azure Information Protection team. Today, we are going to be talking about encryption key management and strategies that you have for compliance. This session is very heavily focused towards O365, Azure Information Protection, and a lot of it relates to Azure Key Vault. So if you have questions that fall outside this, let's talk offline. There is a lot to cover here, but there is a lot more in general about this that needs to be covered. So if anyone had a doubt about why key security, key compliance, and management is important, this should tell you all there is to know. Your key security is the most important thing that you need to think about when you go about doing encryption. But the other side of it is important as well. If you have too much security, you don't apply it in the right way, it hampers productivity. So what we want to do is strike the right balance between security of the keys and the productivity that it offers. So what are you planning to get out of this session? Well, I want you to understand at the end of the day, what are the security underpinnings that go behind key management? What are the compliance requirements that you need to keep your mind on? Compare the key management options that exist in O365, in Azure Information Protection, cloud in general. And most importantly, what are the best practices that you should follow? Now, before we dive deep into the key management strategies, let's do a level set for everyone in the audience. First, a question. How many folks know about Azure Key Vault? That's a small number. Okay. How many folks know Azure Information Protection? Okay, not bad. So this is a good start in the sense that let's talk about what the basics are and we'll build from there. I'm going to pause for a second because more people are coming in and it's the right time to stop so that they don't miss on stuff. All right, I'm going to continue. The three most important keys that matter are: one, a document-specific symmetric key that does the encryption and decryption. Two, your tenant public key, it's an asymmetric key that is used to encrypt your metadata. And three, your tenant private key, which is used to decrypt the metadata. These three keys are core to Azure Information Protection, and the way that Azure Information Protection is integrated into O365, O365 leverages these capabilities as well. So again, we'll come to the O365 integration in a bit, but these are the three keys that really, really matter. Now, as is obvious from all of this, the key in red, the tenant private key, is the one that you really need to worry about in terms of security. Where do you keep this? How do you keep it secure? And making sure it doesn't leak is an administrator's top priority. There are three key options within Azure Information Protection. The first one, Microsoft Managed Keys. Second, bring your own key. And a lot of enterprises that have their own HSMs on premises are very interested in this option. The third one, very specific to Azure Information Protection, is hold your own key. And this is of some interest to organizations that have very secret data that just cannot move to the cloud. We'll talk about that, how you can secure that information with hold your own key. So before we move ahead, let's do a quick demo of what keys and key management looks like. Right? So the first thing that I want to tell you is that in order to manage your keys, you need to have PowerShell. and the Azure Information Protection admin PowerShell commandlets downloaded. So in order to connect to the service, let's try. All right. Now let's look at the keys that we have established for this tenant. So I want to call out two things that you see on the screen here. The first is that there are two different keys identified separately based on their key identifier, the first parameter there. The first key is a Microsoft managed key and appropriately named Microsoft Test. The second key is a customer managed key, BYOK key. You will see a lot of extra information that shows up here, including the public key information, where this key is stored, the key vault URL. All this information is available to you as the tenant administrator to manage. But this is just a start, and this is where all your documents end up with in terms of decrypting. This is the key management that drives all of it. Let's go back to the slide deck and let's talk about keys some more. So this is what you saw, just a copy of the demo. How do you choose? Now you had three options to choose from: Microsoft Managed Keys, BYOK, HYOK. How do you choose which kind of key to use? Our advice on this is very simple. Compliance tops everything. If your industry, if your vertical requires compliance of some sort, prioritize that over everything else. Now, compliance can come in many forms. Certain industries require specific crypto and audit requirements that need to be met. Some are region specific. Sovereignty laws may apply. For example, the Finnish regulations require a minimum of 3072-bit keys. New Zealand requires 4096. So your key length, for example, is specified in certain cases by the regulations, by the sovereignty requirements. In some cases, and we have heard this from customers, their end users, their end tenants, their customers specify crypto requirements in a contractual way. So this has happened in insurance industries where the customers of insurance companies want documents and materials secured using a certain crypto standard. So based on your requirement, you have to go back and analyze this in your specific situation. Your compliance requirements tops everything else. Now map that back and you will pick the right key management solution that's required. So first, compliance tops everything else. The second thing that drives your key choice is data classification. Certain kinds of data, cloud friendly. Put it in SharePoint, put it in Box. It's okay to put on the cloud. Certain kinds of data can never leave on premises. And this is a very, very small fraction in most cases, but they do exist. And for that, you may have to choose a different key requirement, crypto requirement there. So if your organization, if your vertical does not fall under these two, hey, feel free to choose whatever suits you. But we focus on three broad categories of customers. Cloud-first customers. There are a lot of SMBs out there who start with the cloud. These customers have a low level of compliance. Small shops or not in an industry that requires that kind of compliance. And the default security that is offered by the Microsoft Cloud is perfect, good enough for them. They end up using all the online tools, SharePoint Online, Exchange Online. And quite unlikely that they have any on-prem setups that require encryption. For them, using the Microsoft managed keys, perfect. It provides the right level of security, it's available by default, just works. The second category are security-focused cloud customers. Now, this is where the majority of large enterprises sits. A lot of banking, insurance, all the major industries probably fall into this category. Fortune 500 companies will probably fall in this category. Great for them. The reason is that they already have all the security policies in place. They applied it on premises. Now, as they make their move to the cloud, the policies continue to hold. So they have a security focus already that needs to be maintained. They have strict compliance requirements that need to be maintained. And it turns out they may have encryption solutions already that need to be like migrated if required or coexist if that's the case. So if you analyze the kind of requirements that these people have, they are most likely hybrid. They have existing on-premises SharePoint and Exchange servers, if not file servers, and hundreds of other types of applications there. But they are making the move to the cloud, in which case they are using SharePoint Online, or they're planning to use Exchange Online, move a majority of the mailboxes there. How do we make sure that the compliance requirements are met? And here is where bring your own key really makes the difference. Typically, customers already manage their keys in this situation. They have HSMs, they do key rotation, they separate their key with key cards across 2 continents, all kinds of security requirements in place already. How do you translate that into the cloud world? Bring your own key. And lastly, a certain category of customers that we call security first and heavily regulated customers. Defense is the kind of industry that falls in this bracket. Now, these customers are always hybrid because no matter how much data they move to the cloud, some data will always remain on premises. And the kind of classification that they put on these documents, like the really top secret kind versus the rest of your categories, drives the kind of requirements that they have for key management and for compliance and for encryption. In such cases, we have the additional requirement for hold your own key. And we talk about how hold your own key helps in these scenarios a little later in the presentation. A quick discussion on the SKUs. Microsoft managed keys are available by default if you buy O365 or EMS. And they're also available as a default key. So every tenant has a key that's generated and kept for you. You don't have to do extra work to start using Microsoft managed keys. Bring your own key as an option is available across all the SKUs as well. However, it requires Azure Key Vault as an extra Azure subscription to be used. Hold your own key. Again, hold your own key is very specific, very narrow niche use cases here. It's available only in the EMS E5 and the EIP P2 SKU, and as we go and discuss it later, you'll understand why. Any questions till here? Perfect breakpoint. We are going to start talking about Microsoft managed keys after this. All right, one question.
Hybrid environment. BYOK is the recommended one or required?
The question is, in a hybrid environment, is BYOK the recommended one or the required one? BYOK as the option is something that exists in the cloud. What we are talking about is bringing your own key to the cloud. In a hybrid environment, it depends, and we'll talk about it, how you connect to the cloud and where the key exists. So we recommend right now in the configurations that we're talking about that you bring your key to the cloud, you can have your workloads on premises, but still have everything connected through the cloud and working. And we talk about all of this in the coming slides. Sorry, I'm going to move ahead and I'll come back to questions a little later. Let's talk about Microsoft Managed Keys. A very simple definition. When your tenant private key is stored and managed by Azure Information Protection, which is Microsoft, the key type is referred to as a Microsoft Managed Key. There are certain implications of this definition for your documents, your encryption, your compliance. The tenant key, the private key, is managed by Microsoft. And this is important because remember we talked about the tenant private key being the most important to secure. Although it is managed by Microsoft, it is encrypted at rest and it is treated as customer data. It is not something that Microsoft peeks into on a daily basis. It is not something that we as engineers or Microsoft as an operator has access to. So it is treated as customer data, encrypted at rest for making sure that no one has access to it. All applications that integrate with Azure Information Protection can leverage this key transparently. There's nothing that you need to do extra. The default key that exists for a tenant is a 2048-bit soft key, and this is important. The Microsoft Managed Key is not a hardware key, it's a software key. And lastly, of course, you can end up with a Microsoft Managed Key if you're migrating from your on-premises ADRMS, you're importing your key to Azure. One of the options is that you can end up with a Microsoft Managed Key in Azure. So why would you use Microsoft Managed Keys, right? That's the big question. Because at the end of the day, it is really simple to manage. Everything is taken care of. No additional subscriptions, no planning for capacity, performance, or scale. Key management is done securely and handled by Microsoft. You just have to use it. It's transparent and in the background. And most importantly, for certain set of customers, that's all you need. It is sufficient. The security and controls that we put in place are enough for certain categories of customers. And if your customer falls into that category, I would recommend to start with Microsoft Managed Keys. From a topology point of view, whether you have applications on premises or you're using Microsoft's online stuff, O365, in both cases, you can have the applications talk to the Microsoft Managed Key. It can still work. And we support this. So having the Microsoft Managed Key does not mean that you can't connect your on-premises applications to Azure Information Protection, make it work. So a hybrid topology is supported with Microsoft Managed Keys. Let's talk a bit about bring your own key. What is bring your own key? Again, a very simple definition. When you use Azure Key Vault and you bring your keys into the hardware security module and into that boundary, that scenario is referred to as bring your own key. And the distinction here is the use of hardware security modules. What are the implications for AIP? The first thing is that the tenant private key now no longer sits with Azure Information Protection and it's not managed by Microsoft. It is managed by you. It is stored in Azure Key Vault within the hardware security modules. The second thing is that the crypto operations, the actual decrypt operations, happen within Key Vault. So if you are connecting Exchange Online or SharePoint Online to use this, the crypto operations are happening in Key Vault and not in Exchange Online and SharePoint Online. It's an important distinction. So these applications can no longer see your key. And that means that applications that use AIP do not have visibility over the private key, and there's a clear separation of duties that takes place here. There's a service that manages and does your crypto operations, and there's a service that manages your data. The stuff that deals with your data doesn't deal with your keys, and that separation of duties is an enormous win here. But the most important thing from a usability point of view is all the applications that you use with a Microsoft managed key will just work with a BYOK key. No difference. Nothing that an administrator has to do extra once the key is managed by AIP. So let's do the pros and cons. Why would you use BYOK? Remember we talked about compliance? Compliance is important. When you start looking at compliance requirements and compliance drives your key security, your encryption policies, your overall security needs, think of BYOK. Your key is in an HSM, which means that you have better security guarantees around where that key goes, how that key is managed, and who can operate on that key. If you have used an HSM on premises, you understand what it means to lock down a key inside there. You have the similar sort of guarantees with Azure Key Vault and HSMs. Well, at the end of the day, your organization policy itself might require you to use this. And what I mean by that is certain organizations already have well-established policies, and these policies will force you in some form to use BYOK when you make the move to the cloud. From a topology point of view, the key difference here is that Azure Information Protection now points to the actual key that sits in Key Vault. The private key that you have now is in Key Vault, and there's only a reference to it outside. And we use this reference to do all the crypto operations. So anyone who's using Exchange Online and SharePoint Online and wants to encrypt documents and encrypt emails will use the key, but only indirectly. Similarly, if you have on-premises applications that are connected to Azure Information Protection, indirect references, crypto operations still happen in Key Vault. So you are guaranteed the security of your key and the same kind of functionality and capabilities that we promise outside that. Let's talk quickly about how you would configure this. There are two steps. The first is configuring Azure Key Vault. The second is configuring AIP. To configure Azure Key Vault, you need a vault. And an Azure Key Vault is created within an Azure subscription. For folks who use O365, this is something extra. It does not come by default with your O365 subscription. This is a separate Azure subscription that is required. The first point to note here while creating a vault is that you need to create a premium vault. That's the one that has the HSM capabilities inside it. When you create the vault, you need to be aware of the location that you're creating it. And the location has certain significance that I'll talk about later. Make sure that when you create the vault, you pay attention to the location. Second, you can either upload your key package that you have exported from your HSM and upload it and finally take it to Key Vault, or you can generate an HSM key in Key Vault itself. Both count as BYOK. Finally, you need to give Azure Information Protection access to the vault. And this is what I mean by that separation of duties. Although both services are within Microsoft, there is a clear separation of powers there. You have the rights to turn off access to Azure Information Protection as the tenant. And that is very, very helpful. If you believe that your key security is compromised, you can start turning off access to applications that access your vault. That control is what makes BYOK so important. Once you have the key in Key Vault, take the URL and configure Azure Information Protection with the key. Let's actually do that now and see how that works out. All right. So the first thing that I have done is I have logged into my Azure portal. I have an Azure subscription attached to my tenant, and the portal is accessed via portal.azure.com. Let's go to my resource groups. I have a resource group created for bring your own key. I already have a vault that has a key associated. So if you go back, you will actually see that here, rmsaip500.vault.azure.net is actually this vault. I already have a key configured. But let's go through the process anyway. Let's add a new resource to this resource group. Let's search for Key Vault. All right. Let's do some Vault Edition work here. Okay. There you go. That should work. Pay-as-you-go resource group use existing. I'm going to use the existing resource group. I'm going to leave the location as North Central US. We haven't discussed the importance of the location yet, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. This is perfectly good for my demonstration. Pricing tier. Remember to select the premium tier. Access policies. For now, we are going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to come back and edit the access policies to grant AIP access to the vault. And I'm going to create. Give it a minute or two to actually go through the entire automation validation process and finally create out the vault. Great. So it will tell you that it is successful. Let's go to the resource. So what you see is the vault that you have created. It's a premium vault. Its location is North Central US. And right now, you have no keys in here. So let's add a key. You will say upload. At this point, you should have a .byok file. Now, what I'm not showing you is the process by which I have exported the key from my HSM and created the package that is required to import into Azure Key Vault. Typically, that process takes 10 minutes of actual time, but in terms of processes being done to get your key out, it can take months. Large organizations have multiple key cards spread over continents to actually tie to the key. So if you want to export the key or operate on that key, it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of scheduling. That's the reality. The actual export of the key from the HSM takes about 10 minutes. So when you think about doing BYOK, go back, talk to your IT administrators and your security administrators, plan the entire export operation. It's going to take a bit of time. But once you have the key, life becomes very simple. So I'm going to actually pull out the key that I have and give it a name. And I'm going to say create. That's it. You're done. Your key has been uploaded to Key Vault. Every key comes with a version in Key Vault, and this is important because your version is tied to the specific public-private key pair. Every time you generate a new version, it's a different public-private key pair. It means a different configuration in Azure Information Protection. I'm going to copy this URL. This URL is going to be very useful for me when I actually add the key into AIP. So I'm going to take that and put it in Notepad here. Okay, done. So you have created a vault, you have added the key. The last step is actually giving permissions to the Azure Information Protection Service to access this key. So let's go to access policies, say add new, and select principal. Let's do Microsoft Rights Management Services. Select that. Under key permissions, four permissions are all that is required: get, list, decrypt, and sign. So you don't have to give all permissions to your applications, and it is super important that you understand that giving permissions to an application needs to be carefully considered, right? So don't give extra rights than is required, and just say okay. So what you have done now is give permissions to the Azure Information Protection application to access your keys. More importantly, to do decrypt and sign operations on your key. Last step, let's add this key here and see what happens. So remember, we had the key vault URL. We are going to paste that here now. Give it a name. Okay. Key operations are important. Let's not do them lightly. So it will ask you, are you sure whether you want to do this? And hopefully it will work. Fingers crossed. There you go. If you have a look at the keys now, you will see that you've added an extra key. The key vault URL is the one that you have added. This is the public key. The public key is fine. It's meant to be seen. But the state is archived, which means it's not the one being used right now for encryption decryption. How do you change that state? It's quite simple. Say set ADRM key properties, key identifier, copy this out. Again, key operations are not done lightly. If you change the key, it's something that has to be a considered operation. I consider it really important right now, and that's it. Your newly added BYOK key is the active key that's going to be used for encryption decryption across all applications that connect to Azure Information Protection, on premises or in the cloud. Simple stuff, yes? Let's quickly talk about why the location is important. Again, two reasons why you would pick a certain location. First, compliance. Your sovereignty requirements may demand this, and your contracts may require it. The end of the day, the first reason you'd pick a certain location is because of compliance reasons. If you are in the UK and the sovereignty laws require that all customer data remain in the UK, you will pick UK as your vault location. If you're in Australia, same sovereignty laws apply. You'll pick Australia as your vault location. If such laws don't apply to you, if sovereignty laws of where the key resides does not matter, the other reason you'd pick a specific location is to improve the latency. Like every API call between Azure Information Protection and Azure Key Vault is a network call. And reducing the latency for these network calls will radically improve the end user experience that you get. So how do you determine where to put your key if the compliance stuff doesn't matter? Go into your configuration, run get ADRM configuration commandlet. You will find the location of your tenant, and based on the location of your tenant, pick one of the vault locations mentioned below. Now, it's not something that you have to remember right now. This is published in our documentation, and this deck will be available online later. Just keep in mind that you need to pick a location. This is how you do it. One of the key limitations that we have removed is the working of Office 365 applications with BYOK. So if you wanted to send an encrypted email using Outlook Office message encryption, till about a month or so back, you would not have been able to do it. But now, Office message encryption will encrypt your mail with the key that you have brought into Key Vault. So now organizations truly have tied their key with their content in the cloud. There was a session on Tuesday that covered this. I highly recommend that you go back and have a look at the video to see how this actually works out. The session information is down there, BRK2203. It talks about how Office message encryption and Microsoft Azure Information Protection work together, and a key component of that is the fact that your keys can be in Azure Key Vault and still work with Exchange Online. The last set, we have about 7 minutes left, and I want to cover HYOK. HYOK is, like I said, it's very specific and it's very, very niche as a requirement. But what is HYOK? It is an isolated on-premises ADRMS instance that provides you a different private key to secure your secret data. It is different from the keys that you put in Key Vault. It's different from the Microsoft managed key. It is meant to protect data that remains on premises and away from all your cloud instances. Doing this is called holding your own key. It's literally keeping it with you in your environment. There's some key implications to Azure Information Protection. The tenant now has two private keys, one in the cloud, either Microsoft managed or Azure Key Vault, and the other one is on premises. You can still use the applications that connect to Azure Information Protection with HYOK, but they need to be configured as such. It's extra work here. Nothing is as seamless as it should be, but you can get it to work. So HYOK is extra work for you, and I mean extra. So why use HYOK? We understood where Microsoft managed keys are important. We understood why BYOK is important. Why HYOK? There are certain situations in which content can never leave your secure environment. HYOK. The compliance that's offered by Azure Key Vault and BYOK is insufficient for you. This is a hard requirement to actually come across, but there are organizations who believe that Azure Key Vault is insufficient in terms of its security. But the most important bit here is that HYOK and BYOK are not mutually exclusive. Remember, there are two private keys now. So HYOK content is typically kept on premises, but it's less than 5% of all your data. For the few organizations that we have been working on this with, after multiple iterations, they have agreed that it is even less than 1% of the data. It is literally a handful of documents that can never leave. but those handful of documents are so important that, well, they got to be protected differently. And therefore, I want to re-emphasize that when you use HYOK, you get some benefits, but you also have some limitations that go with it. The first is that the data that's protected with the HYOK will be opaque to the cloud. There will be no e-discovery, there will be no search, there will be no journaling, there will be none of that awesome O365 stuff that comes with it. Reasoning over data will not happen when the key is not available in the cloud in some form, and that is the intent. You do not want O365 to ever look at that data. That's why you use this. If you want all that great O365 capabilities, do not use HYOK. The data will remain encrypted at all times and inaccessible to Microsoft, right? Which means that your transport rules in Exchange Online and your DLPs will not be able to look at this data. So you'll have to do an entirely different environment if you want to do malware inspection, you want to have antivirus look at your emails before you encrypt them. All of that stuff will not work for HYOK. Again, it's meant to be a very static, small environment for certain kinds of content. You can share this externally, the data that's protected with HYOK, but it's not easy to share. You can't have all the bells and whistles that come with auditing that we build into the cloud services. It won't come with HYOK. But the most important thing that comes with HYOK, and this is the only reason why customers do it, is that they can prove that they have the physical possession of the key. Like the key really needs to be with them and say, I have the key cards to hold on to the key. That is when you use it. And again, this does not happen very often, but it happens for certain kinds of content. So how does a topology look like? The private key that's kept in Azure Key Vault continues to be there and continues to work with over 95% of your content. But when you want to classify a certain document as secret, you use Azure Information Protection labels, apply it to a document, it contacts the on-premises HYOK server. When you want to classify something as confidential, which is less than that secret, every other kind of content, then it goes to Azure Information Protection in the cloud and then contacts Key Vault or Microsoft managed keys. You can see the difference between where the encrypt, decrypt calls will go in the case of HYOK, the arrow to the red arrow, and in the case of 95% of your content, which will go online. From a demo point of view, this is going to be pretty simple. In order to use HYOK, I'm assuming that you have your HYOK server configured. What I'm really going to show is how you can connect it to a label. Because connecting it to a label is the start point to actually applying it on content. And once you apply it on content, well, the rest is pretty simple and self-sufficient. You create a label, call it HYOK, and when you configure the protection, one of the options that you have is HYOK. So normally you would choose a key in the cloud, but if you want to use HYOK, switch over to that option, configure the URL of the on-premises server and the template ID that you want to use to protect this HYOK content. That's it. This configuration then flows down to all your clients. As your users apply the labels, it will get protected with this on-premises server's template information. So what have we learned? I hope that at the end of the session, you will be able to correctly map your requirements to the right key management option, that you will be able to map the needs of your organization and the need to use HYOK and use it effectively. And at the end of the day, you will understand what all you need to do with your private key to keep it secure. And you should be able to manage it effectively with using the PowerShell in Azure Information Protection. If you want to learn more about this, learn about how you can plan and implement your AIP tenant key using this online documentation that we have. And of course, if you want to learn about hold your own key, there's a blog that we have out there that talks about it. More documentation on HYOK will be coming through. I highly recommend you go back and look at the sessions about AIP that relate to emails and how you encrypt them, and how now your bring your own key in Key Vault will work with Exchange Online to encrypt your emails. And that's it. Thank you, folks.